Hello, students. I welcome you to the fourth lecture on Book 3 of the epic poem The Iliad, a duel and a Trojan view of the Greeks. In my last lecture, I had discussed about how the messenger goddess Iris runs to Helen in the disguise of her sister in law and informs her of the duel that was going to happen between Menelaus and Paris. And Helen goes to the tower where Priam was present along with his other allies, and she points out in the Greek army the great warriors from the Greek side who had come to participate in the Trojan War. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss how Priam goes and makes offerings before taking the oath regarding the duel. So let's begin. Till this point of time in the story, we know that heralds or messengers had been sent to Priam in order to fetch him uh, onto the battlefield in order to take the oath. And I'm starting from the point where the speech of Helen ends. So let's start. Heralds, meanwhile, were bringing through the town the oath offerings for the gods: 2 sheep and a goat skin full of gladdening wine, the fruit of the soil. The herald Idaeus, who carried a gleaming mixing bowl and golden cups, came up to Priam and roused him to action. So these were the things that were being offered to the gods. There are sheep, there is wine, which is considered to be the fruit of the soil, something which is produced by Mother Earth. And he comes up to Priam, one of the heralds, and he tells him that he had been sent in order to call him. Up, son of Laomedon. This is being said to Priam. The commanders of the Trojans and Greek forces are calling for you to come down to the plain and to swear a solemn oath. Paris and warlike Menelaus are going to fight it out with their spears for the woman. Who is the woman over here in question? It is Helen. So the herald informs Priam that he was supposed to go to the battlefield in order to take the oath on behalf of his sons, and a duel was going to take place in order to win Helen. The winner will take the woman, property and all. So whatever had come along with Helen, the winner is going to receive that. We others can then swear oaths of friendship with the enemy and remain in fertile Troy, while the Greeks return to horse grazing Thessaly and Achaia with its lovely women. So, as per the rules or conditions laid down by the duel, whoever wins the duel is going to take back Helen along with him, be it Paris or Menelaus, and the rest of them can part on friendly terms, and the war ultimately will not happen, which was a kind of a good thing for both parties because they did not want bloodshed to happen. So he spoke, and the old man shuddered, but he told his men to yoke the horses to his chariot. Yoking the horses means tying the horses to the chariot, and they promptly complied. Priam mounted and held the horses steady on the reins. Antenor got into the superb chariot beside him, and they drove their fast horses through the Seian gates towards the plain. So Priam at once gets on his chariot and moves in the direction where he was supposed to take the oath. When they reached the assembled armies, they stepped down from the chariot onto the bountiful earth and walked to a spot between the Greeks and the Trojans. If you remember, we had spoken about the no man's land. So Priam walks out over there. Agamemnon, lord of men, and quick thinking Odysseus. We are familiar with Agamemnon. Agamemnon is the brother of Menelaus. Odysseus is another warrior who has or who is known for his intelligence and intellect. And noble heralds herded together the oath offerings for the gods, mixed wine in the bowl, and poured some water on the leader's hands. Then Agamemnon drew the knife that he always carried beside the great scabbard of his sword and cut some wool from the lambs' heads. So, this was the way in which The ceremony started. The wool was distributed among the Trojan and Greek leaders by the heralds. Agamemnon then raised his hands and prayed aloud. So, this is the oath that is being taken by Agamemnon. And he says, Father Zeus, you that rule from Mount Ida, we know Mount Ida is the residence of the gods, and Zeus is the king of gods, greatest and most glorious, and you the sun who see and hear everything, you rivers and you earth, and you powers of the world below that make the dead pay if they have sworn a false oath. I call on you to witness our solemn oaths and see that they are kept. So, what Agamemnon does is that he calls out to Zeus and he calls out to all the elements of nature. He calls out to the sun, the rivers, the earth, as well as powers from the world below. He's talking about powers of the Netherlands or powers of hell that make the dead pay. He says that he wants all these to be a witness to their solemn oaths, and they need to assure that the oaths are kept by both parties. He further says, if Paris kills Menelaus, he is to keep Helen and all her property, and we shall sail away in our seafaring ships. But if auburn haired Menelaus kills Paris, the Trojans must surrender Helen and all her property and make the Greeks compensation on a scale that future generations shall remember. Auburn haired refers to a reddish or brownish red colored hair is called as auburn. So he says that if Paris is able to kill Menelaus, he can keep Helen and they will return back to their lands. But if Menelaus is successful in killing Paris and winning the duel, the Trojans must surrender Helen, point number one, all her property along with her, as well as they wanted the Greeks to compensate. And how they are supposed to compensate? They wanted the Greeks to compensate on a scale so that even the future generations remember. He says, and if in the event of Paris's death, Priam and his sons refuse to meet this demand, I shall stay here and fight for satisfaction until the war is finished. So, this is what Agamemnon says that if Paris is killed and if we win the duel, in spite of doing that, if they find Priam and his sons not following the norms or conditions of the oath, then Agamemnon was going to stay there and fight out the Trojan War. He spoke and slit the lamb's throats with the relentless bronze, referring to the knife, and dropped them gasping on the ground, where life ebbed away from them. So he sacrifices those two lambs by killing them. The knife had removed their spirit. Then they drew wine from the mixing bowls into cups, and as they poured it on the ground, they prayed to their immortal gods. Greeks and Trojans said as one man. So all of them say this together. Zeus, greatest and most glorious, and you are the immortal gods. May the brains of whichever party breaks this treaty referring to the oath, be poured out on the ground as that wine is poured, not only theirs but their children's too, and other men possess their wives. So, this is what the condition or what the consequence of breaking that particular oath was going to be. That the party or the person that breaks this oath or treaty, may the brains be spilled on the ground, may he die. And they were asking for the death of not just the person who breaks the oath or treaty, but also the death of their children and possession of their wives. So this was serious business that was happening, and it just hints that the oath was supposed to be taken seriously by both parties, the Greeks as well as the Trojans. And both sides agreed to this. So they spoke, but Zeus, son of Cronus, did not yet grant their prayers. Now Priam, son of Dardanus, addressed them. Dardanus is one of Priam's ancestors, so at places he is also called as son of Dardanus. And he says, "Hear me, Trojans and Greek men at arms. I am now going back to windswept Ilium, Troy, since I cannot bear to look on while my own dear son fights warlike Menelaus. Zeus and the other immortal gods must know already which of the two is going to his doom. Doom referring to death, destruction. Godlike Priam spoke, put the lambs into the chariot, mounted himself, and held the horses steady on the reins. Antenor got into the superb chariot beside him, and the two drove off on their way back to Ilium. Hector, son of Priam, and godlike Odysseus proceeded to measure out the ground and then to place lots in a bronze helmet. Placing lots in a bronze helmet is almost like doing a coin toss. Okay, we know what a coin toss is. The person who wins the toss is the person who gets to make the first move. So it was kind of similar. What these people used to do was that they used to put lots in a bronze helmet and shake them to see which of the two should throw his bronze spear first. So they shake the lots in the bronze helmet, and the first lot to drop out wins the particular chance to attack first, or to raise his or throw his bronze spear first. The watching armies prayed with their hands raised to the gods. Greeks and Trojans said as one man, Father Zeus, you that rule from Mount Ida, greatest and most glorious, let the man who brought these troubles on both people die and go down to the house of Hades, and let firm oaths of friendship be made. So, house of Hades is kind of a hellish place, like there is a concept of heaven and hell. In Greek mythology, Hades is the ruler of the Netherlands. Let firm oaths of friendship be made. So, whoever is responsible, that particular man should be punished for bringing trouble to both sides, and the rest of them can continue with their friendship. So they spoke, and now great Hector of the flashing helmet shook the helmet, averting his eyes. Paris's lot immediately leapt out, so it was the lot of Paris that drops to the ground. What does it indicate? It indicates that Paris has won the toss in a manner, or he has won the lot, and he was the person who had the first chance to strike at Menelaus with his spear. The troops then sat down in rows, each man by his high stepping horses, where his ornate armor lay. So both parties, the Greek side and the Trojan side, they all sit down, and only Paris and Menelaus are the ones who will fight out the duel in the middle of both parties, called as the no man's land. I'll stop the lecture for today at this point of time. In the next lecture, we are going to see how the duel turns out. Thank you.